A kind guy paid for a poor girl's meal. Unaware she's a millionaire, days later, love found them. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon in the heart of New York City, Jake sat alone at his favorite local diner, nursing a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. The rain beat against the windows, the sound of it soft yet constant, like the world was holding its breath. He had been struggling lately, working extra shifts at the car dealership to make ends meet. But even with his tireless work, he could barely cover the rent. His mind drifted, lost in thought, until a slight commotion at the counter caught his attention. A young woman, perhaps in her early 20s, was standing nervously, fumbling with the bill in front of her. Jake noticed the way she glanced at the bill, her brow furrowed, as if trying to figure out how to make the numbers add up. She looked tired, worn out from the weight of the world, but there was a quiet strength in her demeanor. Without thinking, he stood up and walked over to her table. "Excuse me," he said softly. "Let me take care of that for you." The girl looked up in surprise, her eyes wide with confusion. "Oh, no, that's really kind of you, but I can't," she started. But Jake just smiled, shaking his head. "No, it's fine. I insist," he said, his voice warm. She hesitated for a moment but then nodded, accepting his offer. He paid the bill and left a tip that he couldn't afford, but felt was necessary. As he walked out of the diner, he caught a glimpse of her watching him from the window. There was something about her that tugged at his heart, but he didn't think much of it at the time. After all, he was just a guy trying to do something nice for a stranger. Little did he know this small act of kindness would set off a series of events that would change both of their lives forever. Now, let's turn back to the young woman and see how things unfold. Days passed, and life returned to its usual pace for Jake. He went back to work at the dealership, handling cars and customers with a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He kept thinking about the girl he had helped at the diner. Her face lingered in his mind, her hesitance, her gratitude. But he didn't dwell on it for long. After all, he had his own problems to deal with. The rent was due, and the car sales weren't enough to cover it. His thoughts were constantly consumed by his struggle to keep his head above water. The girl at the diner was just a fleeting moment, a brief encounter he could easily forget, or so he thought. But then, a few days later, Jake found himself walking down the street after work, his hands deep in his pockets, head down against the chilly wind. As he passed by a small coffee shop, he heard someone call his name. "Hey, Jake!" He turned around, startled, and saw the same girl from the diner standing by the door of the coffee shop, a warm smile on her face. Her eyes sparkled, and she looked so different from the girl he remembered, more confident, more alive. "Hi! I don't know if you remember me, but you paid for my meal the other day at that diner," she said, her voice bright with sincerity. Jake blinked, not sure if he was imagining it. He hadn't expected to see her again. "Oh, of course I remember you. How could I forget?" he replied, feeling a bit awkward. "I've been meaning to thank you properly for what you did." "It was really kind of you," she said, taking a step closer to him. Jake smiled, his nerves easing. "It was nothing really, just a little thing." "Still, it meant a lot to me," she insisted. "Can I buy you a coffee? I'd love to talk to you for a bit." Jake hesitated for a moment. He wasn't used to people wanting to buy him coffee. But there was something about her. Something that made him want to say yes. Maybe it was the way she looked at him. Like she genuinely wanted to connect. "Sure," he said, shrugging. "I could use a break." They walked into the coffee shop together, and she led him to a corner booth by the window. The place was cozy, warm, with soft music playing in the background. As they sat down, Jake noticed how much more at ease she seemed now. Her nervousness from the diner had disappeared. She ordered a cappuccino, and Jake followed suit, both of them leaning back in their chairs as they waited. "So," she began. "What do you do, Jake?" Jake shrugged, looking down at his cup. I work at a car dealership. Not the most glamorous job, but it pays the bills. She nodded, her eyes thoughtful. I get that. I'm working part-time right now, doing what I can to make ends meet. It's been tough. Jake raised an eyebrow. Yeah, I know how that feels. There was a long pause as they both sipped their drinks, the silence comfortable, not awkward. He felt something shift between them. It was as if they had crossed some invisible line, from strangers to something else. She wasn't just a girl who had needed help that day. She was a person, with her own struggles, just like him. He was beginning to understand that. I never really told you my name, she said suddenly, breaking the silence. I'm Emily, Jake smiled. Nice to officially meet you, Emily. She returned his smile, her eyes warm. I wanted to say thank you again for helping me. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't stepped in. You didn't have to, but you did. That's not something I forget easily. Jake shifted uncomfortably in his seat. It was just a small thing, he muttered, though deep down he knew it meant more than he was willing to admit. They sat there for a while, talking about little things, their conversation flowing easily. Emily shared more about her life, how she had always loved art but couldn't afford to pursue it, how she was juggling 2 part-time jobs just to make rent. Jake found himself listening more intently than he expected. It was refreshing, hearing her talk about her dreams, her struggles, without any pretense. She was genuine, and that was something rare. As they finished their coffee, Emily stood up and smiled at him. Thanks for the chat, Jake. It was nice to meet someone who actually listens. Jake smiled back, a little embarrassed by the compliment. Anytime, Emily. She gave him a small wave as she turned to leave, and he watched her walk out of the coffee shop, disappearing into the busy street. He sat there for a moment, feeling an unexpected warmth in his chest. It wasn't just the coffee, it was something about her. Something that made him think maybe, just maybe, there was more to life than just getting by. Maybe he had helped her that day. But now, she had somehow helped him too. A few days passed, and Jake couldn't stop thinking about Emily. Their coffee shop conversation kept replaying in his mind, the way she spoke with such honesty, the way she smiled at him as though she genuinely appreciated his company. He hadn't realized how much he needed a conversation like that until it happened. The weight of his own struggles had felt so heavy, and talking to Emily made him feel lighter, like there was someone who understood, even if they barely knew each other. Life went on as usual for Jake, but there was a subtle shift in him. Something that told him this wasn't just some random encounter, it felt like the start of something meaningful. Emily had left a mark on him, and he couldn't help but wonder if he had left one on her too. As he finished his shift one evening, he was about to head home when he received a message. The text was from an unknown number, and as he opened it, his heart skipped a beat. It was Emily. Hey Jake, I know this is a little out of the blue, but I wanted to invite you to a charity event I'm attending this weekend. I think you might enjoy it. Let me know if you'd like to come. It would be great to see you again, Emily. Jake stared at the screen, unsure of what to make of it. A charity event? He couldn't remember the last time he'd been to something like that. But the idea of seeing Emily again, of spending more time with her, made his heart race. He quickly typed a response. I'd love to come. Thanks for the invite, Emily. He hit send, and almost immediately, a wave of excitement washed over him. He had no idea what to expect from the event, but he knew one thing: he wanted to be there. The night of the charity event arrived, and Jake stood in front of his apartment mirror, adjusting his tie. He wasn't used to dressing up, especially for something like this. He felt a bit out of place. But there was something about Emily that made him want to try. As he walked into the venue, a luxurious hotel ballroom, he was immediately struck by the contrast between his casual appearance and the polished crowd around him. The room was filled with well-dressed people chatting over glasses of wine, the soft hum of their conversations blending with the gentle music playing in the background. Jake felt like an outsider in a world he didn't belong to, but his thoughts quickly shifted as he spotted Emily across the room. She looked stunning, dressed in a sleek black dress that hugged her figure perfectly, her hair styled in loose waves that framed her face beautifully. She was laughing with a group of people, her smile lighting up the entire room, and Jake felt his heart skip a beat. She looked like someone who belonged in this world, someone who had it all together, and for a moment, he felt like he was out of his league. But then Emily caught sight of him, and her eyes lit up with recognition. She excused herself from the group and made her way over to him, her steps confident, her smile warm. "Jake! You came!" she said, her voice full of excitement. Jake returned her smile, feeling a rush of relief. "Of course, I wouldn't miss it," he replied, his voice a little shakier than he intended. "You look amazing," he added, genuinely in awe of her. Emily blushed, her cheeks turning a light pink. "Thank you. You look great too, Jake." They stood there for a moment, taking in each other's presence, before Emily offered to introduce him to a few people. As they made their way through the crowd, Jake couldn't help but notice how effortlessly Emily moved through the room, greeting people with a grace he could never have imagined for himself. She was confident, poised, and looked like she had been doing this her whole life. But as the evening wore on, Jake began to notice something else. Emily wasn't just making small talk with these people. She was listening, really listening, to what they had to say. Her genuine interest in others was evident, and it made her even more beautiful in Jake's eyes. He couldn't help but feel a growing admiration for her. By the end of the evening, they found a quiet spot near the balcony, away from the bustling crowd. The city lights below twinkled like stars, and the cool breeze brushed against their skin. "I'm really glad you came, Jake," Emily said softly, her eyes reflecting the lights around them. "I know this world can feel a little overwhelming, but I'm happy you're here with me." Jake smiled, his heart swelling. "I'm happy to be here. Honestly, I wasn't sure if I belonged, but being with you makes it feel easier." Emily's smile widened. "You belong more than you think." There was a brief pause as they looked out over the city, the sound of the party below fading into the background. For the first time in a long time, Jake felt like he wasn't alone in the world. He wasn't just some guy working a dead-end job. He was someone who had made a difference to Emily, and that meant more to him than anything else. As they stood there, the connection between them deepened, and Jake realized that he had found something far more valuable than money or success. He had found someone who truly cared. And that, he thought, was worth more than anything he could have ever imagined. As the weeks went by, Jake and Emily grew closer. Their connection deepened, but neither of them fully understood the weight of what was unfolding between them. Emily's world, the world of high society, was so different from Jake's. His life was simple, focused on survival, while hers was filled with opportunities, events, and expectations. Yet, despite these differences, they found comfort in each other's presence. Jake couldn't help but admire Emily's warmth, her kindness, the way she made him feel seen, as if he mattered in a world that often made him feel invisible. She, on the other hand, found solace in Jake's authenticity, in the way he listened to her without any agenda, how he didn't see her as just a wealthy woman, but as a person with her own struggles, dreams, and fears. One night, Emily invited Jake over to her apartment for dinner. It was an intimate gathering, just the two of them, and she had spent the evening preparing a homemade meal. As Jake walked into her sleek, modern apartment, he couldn't help but be taken aback by the contrast between her world and his own. The apartment was spacious, with large windows offering a breathtaking view of the city skyline, and the furniture was all designer. Everything looked polished and perfect. Yet, despite the luxury around him, he could sense the warmth in the air, the feeling that this was Emily's sanctuary, her space to be herself. Emily greeted him with a warm smile as he stepped inside, her eyes lighting up when she saw him. "You made it. I'm glad," she said, leading him into the dining area. "I wanted to cook for you, something simple." Jake felt a bit out of place, standing in her luxurious home, but Emily's presence made everything feel okay. She had a way of making him feel like he belonged, no matter where he was. As they sat down to eat, Emily poured them both a glass of wine, and they started talking about their lives. "So," Jake said, taking a sip of his drink, "tell me more about your work. I know you do charity stuff, but what else?" Emily smiled, her eyes sparkling as she spoke. "Well, aside from the charity events, I'm also working with a few organizations that focus on helping underprivileged children. I'm really passionate about it. It's one of the things that keeps me grounded." Jake nodded, impressed by how much she did for others. That's amazing. I can't even imagine how much time and effort that takes. It does take a lot of time, but it's worth it. There's something so fulfilling about giving back, Emily replied, her voice softening. Jake felt a pang in his chest. He admired her dedication, her heart for helping others, but a part of him wondered if he could ever fit into her world. He had never been involved in anything like that. His life had always been about just getting by, working long hours, and surviving. Could someone like him ever belong in a world like hers? Emily seemed to read his thoughts as she looked at him with understanding. Jake, I know this life might seem foreign to you, but that's not what matters. What matters is who you are, what's in your heart. That's what makes you valuable, and you've shown me that. Jake looked at her, his heart racing. He had never had anyone speak to him like that before, like he was worth something, just as he was. The silence that followed was comfortable, filled with a quiet understanding between them. Emily reached across the table, placing her hand gently on his. You don't have to be anything other than yourself, Jake. That's all I've ever wanted from anyone. His throat tightened at her words, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like he could breathe easy. He wasn't just a guy from the wrong side of town anymore. He was someone who mattered to Emily. The evening continued with easy conversation, laughter, and a sense of peace that neither of them had expected. As the night came to a close, Emily walked Jake to the door, her hand lingering in his as they said goodbye. I'm glad you came tonight, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Me too, Jake replied, his voice thick with emotion. As he stepped into the elevator, his mind raced. He had been waiting for something that would change his life, and now, he realized, that something was here. It wasn't fame, it wasn't wealth, it was Emily, this kind, genuine woman who had somehow made him feel like he was enough. Jake knew his life would never be the same. Emily had shown him that there was more to life than just surviving. There was a chance for love, for connection, and maybe just maybe a future he never thought possible. The days that followed were filled with a mix of excitement and uncertainty for Jake. He had never felt more alive, but also more uncertain. His relationship with Emily was growing, and each day they spent together seemed to bring them closer. Yet there was something that lingered in the back of his mind. He had never belonged to her world, and though she made him feel seen and valued, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was just an outsider in her life. Emily had shown him a different way of living, a way of connecting with the world that didn't revolve around just getting by. She had taught him about kindness, about love, and the importance of believing in yourself. But he still couldn't shake the thought, was he enough for her? Did he belong in her world? Emily, on the other hand, seemed to have no doubts. She loved him for who he was, and that was something he had never experienced before. But as much as he appreciated her support and love, there were times when he couldn't help but feel like an imposter. One night, as they sat together at a charity gala that Emily had invited him to, Jake found himself standing by the balcony, looking out over the city skyline. The view was breathtaking, just like everything else about this world Emily had introduced him to. The room was filled with laughter, conversation, and the clinking of glasses. Yet Jake felt like he was standing at the edge of it all, unable to fully immerse himself. He couldn't help but wonder if this was where he truly belonged. Emily joined him by the balcony, her presence like a calming breeze, and for a moment, they stood in silence, just taking in the view. You're quiet tonight, Emily said softly, her voice gentle. What's on your mind? Jake hesitated, not sure how to put his thoughts into words. I don't know, Em, he said finally, his voice tinged with uncertainty. Sometimes I feel like I'm out of place in this world. Your world. I'm just me, trying to survive. And I don't know if I'm enough for you. Emily's eyes softened as she looked at him, her hand reaching for his. Jake, you are more than enough. You're everything I've ever wanted in a person. I don't care about the money, the status, the lifestyle. I care about you. I always have. Her words washed over him like a wave, and for the first time in a long while, Jake felt a sense of peace. He had been so focused on what he didn't have, on the things he thought made him unworthy, that he hadn't realized what truly mattered. Emily cared for him because of who he was, not what he had. I've been so scared, Jake admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Scared that I'm not enough. That one day you'll realize I don't fit into your life the way you deserve. Emily smiled softly, squeezing his hand. Jake, I don't want perfection. I want real. And you are real, Jake. You don't have to change a thing. Jake looked at her, the love and sincerity in her eyes making him feel something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. For the first time, he believed that maybe, just maybe, he had found something worth fighting for. The rest of the evening passed in a blur, the tension in Jake's chest slowly melting away with every smile, every laugh, every moment they shared. He realized that, despite their differences, he and Emily were building something beautiful together. The next morning, Jake woke up with a sense of clarity he hadn't felt in a long time. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was living. And he had Emily to thank for that. She had shown him the value of love, of connection, and of believing in yourself. He wasn't just a guy who worked at a car dealership. He was someone who mattered. As he prepared for another day at work, Jake found himself thinking about their future. He didn't know what it would look like, but one thing was for sure: he was ready to embrace it, no matter what it held. He had Emily by his side, and that was all he needed. The thought of their future filled him with a sense of excitement, and for the first time in a long time, Jake felt like he had a place in this world, a place next to Emily, where he was loved and accepted just as he was. As the weeks passed, Jake and Emily continued to grow closer, their bond becoming stronger with each passing day. Emily's world, one filled with lavish events, influential people, and endless opportunities, continued to fascinate Jake. But what fascinated him most was how grounded she remained. She didn't care about his lack of wealth, his struggles with bills, or the fact that he didn't have a fancy title. She cared about who he was as a person. In return, Jake had found himself falling deeper in love with her, not for her wealth or status, but for her kindness, her genuine heart, and her ability to make him feel seen when he often felt invisible. One evening, after a long day at the dealership, Jake arrived at Emily's apartment. The soft glow of the city lights outside filtered through the large windows, casting a warm ambiance in the room. Emily greeted him with a soft smile, her eyes lighting up when she saw him. "Hi," she said, as she walked over and hugged him tightly. "How was your day?" "Long," Jake replied, his arms wrapping around her as he inhaled the comforting scent of her perfume. "But now that I'm here, it's all better." Emily smiled, pulling away slightly to look at him. "I'm glad," she said, her voice soft. "You deserve better than just getting by." Jake didn't know how to respond to that. He had spent so much time focused on surviving, on pushing through every obstacle life threw at him, that he had never really stopped to think about the bigger picture, the future, his happiness, and what he truly wanted out of life. Emily had helped him see that. They sat down to a quiet dinner, Emily having cooked his favorite meal. As they ate, they talked about their days, their dreams, and their hopes for the future. Emily shared how she had been thinking more and more about starting a non-profit to help underprivileged youth, something she was incredibly passionate about. Jake listened intently, his admiration for her growing with every word. "I think that's amazing," he said, his voice full of genuine support. "You have so much to offer, Emily. I have no doubt you'll make a difference." Emily smiled, a soft blush coloring her cheeks. "Thank you, Jake. That means a lot to me," she said. There was a pause in their conversation, and Jake couldn't help but feel a pang of longing in his chest. He wanted to help her, to support her dreams, but there was a voice in the back of his mind reminding him of his limitations. He didn't have the resources she had, the connections, or the lifestyle she was accustomed to. He was just a guy from a small town trying to make ends meet. Emily must have sensed his thoughts, because she reached across the table and gently placed her hand over his. "Jake," she said softly, her eyes filled with sincerity. "You're everything I've ever wanted, not because of what you have, but because of who you are. I don't need anything else." Jake looked into her eyes, the love and trust he saw there making his heart race. He had never felt more at home with anyone before. The self-doubt that had plagued him for so long began to fade, replaced by a deep sense of certainty. He was enough. He didn't need to change for Emily. He didn't need to be anyone else. He was Jake, and that was enough for her. As they finished dinner, Emily stood up and walked over to the window, looking out at the city below. Jake joined her, standing beside her as they both took in the view. "You know," Emily said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, "I used to think that having all these things, was what I needed to feel fulfilled. But then I met you, Jake, and I realized that the only thing I ever really needed was to feel truly seen, to feel loved for who I am." Jake's heart swelled at her words. He had never thought of himself as someone who could offer her anything she didn't already have, but in that moment, he realized that what they shared was more valuable than any amount of money or status. They were building something real, something grounded in trust, love, and understanding. He had found his place, not in the world of wealth and luxury, but in the world Emily had created for them, a world where love and authenticity mattered more than anything else. "I feel the same way," Jake said, his voice thick with emotion. "I never thought I could find someone like you, someone who makes me feel like I matter, just as I am." Emily turned to him, her hand finding his again, and for a moment, they simply stood there, looking out at the world together. In that moment, Jake knew that no matter what challenges life threw their way, they would face them together. They had already found the most important thing, each other. The weeks that followed felt like a whirlwind for Jake and Emily, each day bringing them closer as they continued to navigate their relationship. They found themselves spending more time together, from quiet evenings at Emily's apartment to adventurous outings around the city. Emily had been his anchor, the one person who helped him see the world through a different lens. And with each passing moment, Jake felt his heart grow more connected to hers. However, despite all the happiness and love he felt, there was still a part of him that couldn't shake the feeling that he was not enough. He had never been someone who had the means to offer her the kind of lifestyle she was used to. And even though Emily constantly reassured him that she loved him for who he was, not for what he had, Jake still carried a lingering doubt. One evening, as they walked hand in hand through the city, Jake decided to voice his concerns. "Emily," he began, his voice uncertain, "I know you say you love me for who I am, but I can't help but wonder if one day you'll want someone who can give you the things I can't. Someone who can offer you the life that fits your world." Emily stopped in her tracks, turning to face him, her expression soft, yet unwavering. "Jake," she said gently, placing a hand on his cheek, "you are everything I need. I don't care about the things you can't give me. I care about you, about what you bring to my life. You make me feel loved, seen, and valued. That's more than anything money or status could ever offer." Jake looked into her eyes, the sincerity in her gaze, cutting through the self-doubt that had been clouding his mind. He wanted to believe her, to accept that their love was enough, but the weight of his own insecurities made it hard. Emily seemed to sense his hesitation. "Jake, I've never asked for a life of luxury. What I want is someone who will be there for me, who will share my dreams and build a future with me. And that someone is you." She smiled, her eyes filled with warmth. "I don't need anything more." The words hung in the air between them, and for the first time, Jake allowed himself to believe them. He had been so focused on what he lacked, on the things he thought Emily deserved, that he had never stopped to realize that what they shared was more than enough. They had built something real, something grounded in love and mutual respect, and that was all that truly mattered. The next few days felt different for Jake. He still had his doubts from time to time, but every moment with Emily reminded him that they were building a life together, one built on love, trust, and acceptance. It was no longer about what he could give her, but about what they could create together. One night, as they sat on the couch in Emily's apartment, Emily leaned her head on Jake's shoulder, a content sigh escaping her lips. "I'm so happy," she whispered. "Me too," Jake replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I never thought I could have this, a life like this." Emily smiled up at him, her eyes shining. "You deserve it, Jake. You deserve to be happy." Jake couldn't help but smile back, the warmth of her words melting away the last of his doubts. "I'm just glad I get to share it with you," he said softly. As they sat together in comfortable silence, the future didn't seem so uncertain anymore. For the first time, Jake felt like he truly belonged, like he had found his place in the world, and that place was beside Emily. He knew there would be challenges ahead, that their worlds were still different, but he was no longer afraid. Together, they could face anything. And as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, Jake realized that the love they had built was stronger than any fear, stronger than any doubt. It was a love that had transformed him, that had helped him see his own worth. And for the first time in his life, he knew that he was enough. The months went by, and Jake and Emily's love continued to grow stronger with each passing day. They had faced their doubts and insecurities, But together, they had found a way to build something real, something beautiful. Despite their differences, their bond was undeniable. Jake had come to realize that he didn't need to change for Emily, and Emily had come to understand that her wealth and status didn't define her. What mattered was the love they shared and the future they were creating together. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Emily turned to Jake with a thoughtful expression on her face. "Jake," she said softly, "I've been thinking a lot lately about the future, about us." Jake looked at her, his heart racing. He had been thinking about the future too, but he didn't know where their relationship was heading. He had always been so focused on surviving, on just getting by, that he had never really stopped to think about what he wanted in life beyond the present moment. "What about the future?" he asked, his voice hesitant. Emily smiled, her eyes filled with warmth. "I want us to be happy, Jake. I want us to build a life together, to create something lasting." Her words hit him harder than he expected. The thought of building a future with her, of sharing a life together, felt like a dream he never thought possible. He had never allowed himself to believe in a future beyond the struggles of the present. But with Emily, everything felt different. He realized that he wasn't just living for the moment anymore, he was living for a future with her. "I want that too," Jake replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I want to build a future with you, Emily. I want to be with you, no matter what." Emily's smile widened, and she reached for his hand, holding it tightly. "I know we've both come from different places, Jake, but I believe in us. I believe in what we can do together." As they sat there, hand in hand, the future no longer seemed like an uncertain path. They didn't have all the answers, and they knew there would be challenges ahead. But they also knew that they could face those challenges together. Their love had already been through so much, and it had only made them stronger. The next day, as they walked through the park, Jake couldn't help but feel a sense of peace settle over him. The world around them seemed brighter, more vibrant. It was as if the weight of his past struggles had been lifted, and he was finally able to see the beauty of the present moment. As they stopped at a bench to sit and enjoy the view, Jake turned to Emily, his heart full of gratitude. "I can't believe how far we've come," he said softly. "I never thought I'd be here, with someone like you." Emily looked at him with a tender smile, her eyes sparkling in the sunlight. "You deserve this, Jake. You deserve to be happy." Jake's heart swelled at her words, and he reached for her hand, holding it tightly. "And I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy," he said, his voice full of conviction. Emily's smile grew even wider, and for a moment, the world around them seemed to disappear. It was just the two of them, in that moment, surrounded by the warmth of their love. "Jake," Emily said softly, her voice full of emotion, "I want to spend the rest of my life with you too." The words hung in the air between them, and Jake felt a surge of emotion wash over him. He had found something truly special, something he never thought was possible. He had found love, and with it, a future he could build and share with Emily. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about living, about growing together, and about making their dreams come true. As they sat there, side by side, hand in hand, Jake realized that he had everything he had ever wanted. He had found his place, his purpose, and most importantly, he had found Emily, the woman he loved. And with her by his side, he knew there was nothing they couldn't face. Together, they would build a future full of love, happiness, and endless possibilities. As Jake and Emily continued to build their life together, the love they shared grew even stronger, becoming the foundation of everything they did. They found themselves working side by side, not just in the quiet moments at home, but in the dreams they were building for their future. Emily's nonprofit took off in ways she had never imagined, with Jake right there, supporting her every step of the way. He wasn't just the man beside her, he was her partner in every sense of the word, helping her make a real difference in the world. Jake had come to realize that it wasn't about what he could give her in terms of wealth or status. It was about being there for her, believing in her, and sharing their dreams together. The more they worked together, the more Jake realized that his doubts had been misplaced. It wasn't about fitting into her world, it was about creating their own world together, one where both of them could thrive. Emily had always known that Jake was the one, but as time passed, she grew more certain of it every day. He had a heart full of kindness, strength, and determination. He didn't have the wealth or privilege that some others might have, but in her eyes, he had everything she could ever need. One weekend, after a long week of work, Emily and Jake decided to take a trip out of the city. They rented a small cabin by the lake, a place to get away from the hustle and bustle and simply enjoy each other's company. As they sat by the fire, roasting marshmallows and laughing, Emily looked at Jake with a soft smile. "You know," she said, her voice full of emotion, "I never imagined life could be like this. I never thought I'd find someone who made me feel so complete." Jake turned to her, his heart swelling at her words. "I feel the same way," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've shown me that love is about so much more than just surviving. It's about living, about growing together." Emily reached out, taking his hand in hers, and for a moment, there was nothing but the sound of the crackling fire and the quiet beauty of the night around them. It was in that moment that Jake realized something profound. He had found everything he had ever wanted, not in the things he had or the life he had expected, but in Emily. She had become his world, and he had become hers. As they sat there, watching the fire flicker in the darkness, Emily turned to Jake with a look of determination in her eyes. "Jake, I know we've had our doubts, but I want to ask you something." Jake raised an eyebrow, curious. "What's that?" Emily took a deep breath before continuing. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" The words hung in the air for a moment, and Jake felt his heart stop. His mind raced as he took in her words. It wasn't the question he had expected, but it was the one he had secretly hoped for. He smiled, his eyes filled with emotion, and without a second thought, he took her hand. "Yes," he said, his voice full of certainty. "Yes. I will marry you." Emily's face lit up with joy as she threw her arms around him, hugging him tightly. "I can't believe it," she whispered. "I've been waiting for this moment." Jake held her close, feeling a wave of happiness wash over him. He had never felt more certain about anything in his life. They had been through so much, and now they were ready to face the future together, hand in hand. The next few months flew by in a blur of wedding preparations, and before they knew it, the day had arrived. It was a small, intimate ceremony, just the two of them surrounded by the people who mattered most. As they exchanged vows, Jake looked into Emily's eyes and knew without a doubt that this was where he was meant to be. Emily had shown him what true love was, love that wasn't based on appearances or material things, but on trust, understanding, and the willingness to build something beautiful together. As they kissed for the first time as husband and wife, Jake felt a sense of peace settle in his heart. He had found his place, and it was beside Emily. He had found a love that would last a lifetime, a love that had transformed his life in ways he never thought possible. With Emily by his side, he knew there was nothing they couldn't face. Together, they would continue to build the future they had always dreamed of, one full of love, laughter, and the knowledge that they were enough together, they were everything.